Welcome to the DOSA Dadcast, a men's ministry podcast dedicated to health and well-being of fathers raising children with special needs. Each episode is here to offer encouragement, belonging, and real stories from dads who understand the journey. This week, we hear from Sean Medlin, a dad of two autistic boys who stumbled across DOSA purely by accident. What he discovered wasn't about comparison, but about perspective, and how community changes everything when you're a dad on special assignment.
Sean actually is part of our Battle Creek group that meets in BA. He's been coming for several months now, and I feel like has been heavily engaged and very faithful part of what we do, and has responded well to just the call of leadership and leading family. And I feel like he's a guy who just has a real heart for what we do. He has an incredible story, and it's kind of funny, as I know Sean's going to share how he first got introduced to the group and got involved, and I've really enjoyed getting to know Sean and just kind of hearing from him where he's at in life. He's a guy who has a really neat background, and I've just come to love him dearly. Even though we don't spend a lot of time together, I feel like I know Sean just from our time together, and I really look forward to hearing more from you tonight, Sean. So thanks for taking time out of your schedule and being a part of this and sharing your story.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me, and thanks for including me in this. This is, yeah, this is great. I'm excited to be here.
Well, and it's been a while coming. We've been talking I feel like it's been a couple weeks just trying to get everything coordinated. And then I don't know about you, but Jeremy and I were talking, it's like we live and die by our calendar,
Yeah,
and
100%.
And
even
I
today,
think
I mean, today was just a rat race for me. I've started, if you could see my calendar, it's just between work and personal. I've been downtown twice today. I'm all over, and then got home. I got home probably around 5-ish, and then immediately tend to getting dinner ready, and then up until probably 7:55 almost, I was trying to put my daughter down, and then hurry and ran and grabbed the laptop and opened up Zoom. So I feel you.
yeah, and what's really funny about it is how many times do we drop stuff that doesn't go on the calendars? Like tonight, and in the text last night, I was like, hey, apparently soccer didn't get scheduled on our calendar. I had no idea. Sorry, guys, can we push this out a little bit? So I want to ask this just immediately, like when it comes down to your wife and you scheduling just life with your kids, how important is it for that schedule to be kind of concrete? Because I know for us and Jeremy, it's got to be pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question, and one I haven't really been posed. I would say it's about as much, it's useful in many ways, and then there are times where you really need to be flexible, and so excuse me, I'm someone that I came from a very rigid structure in the military. So I was in the Air Force for 10 years, and I mean, I was just talking about this morning. I was at the gym during my lunch with a friend, and I was talking about how it's wild how I'm so far removed from this life of waking up at 3:30 every morning, going to the gym, going to PT with 100 people, and then being at the office by 6:45, and then just, everything's planned out. And now with children, it's like it's very important to have certain pieces of the schedule in place, but there has to be somewhere in the middle of that day, this flexibility. And so I think it's very important, right? And it's very important that me and my wife are on the same page. And so we, it's taken a while to get to this place, but we are definitely today, we use Apple shared calendar, and we just share. And I mean, no matter what it is, we're adding everything. And it's like, it's not so we can micromanage each other. It's so when the flexibility needs to happen, we can look at that real quick and say, who can support, right? And that's a big part of it. Is I feel like I am someone that if I don't live by routine, and something like if my wife came in right now and threw a curveball and said, we got to go do this tomorrow, and it's not in the calendar, I feel like my natural response is to geek out, but I've learned that with children, that you've got to learn that you've got to learn to navigate the chaos, and it's like it's different waters. I mean, I've got brothers that still don't have either still single or married with no children. And it's just like this life it's impossible to see this side, for them. They're like, structure is easy, structure is fine. You need routine in your life. I'm like, dude, get a kid, right? And then even on top of that, if you have a neurodivergent child, it's just totally different. My two boys, and I'm digressing a little here, but my 7 and 9 year old, those are my two autistic boys. And the difference in my household, even compared to like a neurotypical family that'll be like friends of ours, is that their 7 and 9 year old are more autonomous and can do a lot of things on their own. I'm still having to pour waters from my kids and very, very, very much do everything for them. So those little things over time, they add up. And so just like getting home at 5 and here I am at 8, I didn't even take off my work clothes. I'm just like, there's zero downtime. I barely got away to go to the restroom. They're very needy, and that's okay. Like I've learned to grow accustomed to that life. So I said a lot to your answer there or your question there, but I think structure is very important, but I think it's also just as important to have flexibility in that schedule and
Yeah,
account for
100,
that, right?
100%. And I just want to say, if you need to step away and go to the bathroom, just raise your hand like you did in grade
Yeah.
school, and we'll just press pause, and you can go do what you need to do.
Luckily, I've
Um,
learned to develop like a camelback bladder, so I think I'm good right now.
Man, I wish that was the same for me. And you touched on something else that was really kind of you talk about kids who don't have neurodivergent or families that don't have neurodivergent children.
Mhm.
That's a whole we can like do a whole hour on that alone.
Yeah.
Um, but what has been like the biggest struggle for you and your wife when it comes down to like your friends and family that maybe don't really understand like the spectrum? We've experienced this
Yeah.
just with Lindley, but how do you navigate that? Because I mean, there's going to be a parent listening to this right now that goes, "Hey, I need to listen to this." And
Yeah.
so, what's been your biggest thing that has really helped you explain this to other families? Hey, this is our normal, versus what you said, they're autonomous children.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this is an ever evolving answer for me because I'm still learning this. And this really kind of feeds into, I think, Jeremy, what I've shared with the DOSA group before and why it's been so important for me. It's been an eye opener for me because if we go with my oldest Theo, who's about to be 9, so for 9 years, I mean, at least 6 of those navigating this with a diagnosis of autism. Um, Navigating this and not even realizing I'm trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? And it's just like, and that's like in the analogy there is with friends and family that we try to create our inner circle with and associate with. Um, we just don't fit the same mold, and in a lot of ways, even in societal ways, we're not fitting this mold. But like we're trying, and we're just constantly grinding, spinning our wheels and grinding gears for no reason. And I think the best way that I've pitched this to other families, and I've done this exercise so many times to where a lot of times I feel like the conversation falls on deaf ears because I think the idea from their perspective is that I'm just trying to make a unique use case for myself to excuse myself from certain things. Like the best example I have is my one of my best friends, Ben. He loves to watch TV, right? And I used to I love film. For me, I'm a geek about it as much as I used to be video games. And he will call me all the time and be like, "Dude, did you watch this new show? Watch this new show." I haven't watched a TV show and I can't even remember, right? Like it's just it doesn't happen in my life anymore. I don't have the capacity for it. And so I have to explain, man, I just don't have the time. He's like, "What do you mean you don't have the time?" And it's like I can't explain this to him. Like I can try to go into detail and I'm going to lose him somewhere in those details. So what I've learned, what works better is just setting boundaries, and boundaries are very important. And this is coming from a man that I consider myself a yes man. It's hard for me to say no to anything, and I'll overburden myself for the sake of never saying no. And I've learned that just doesn't work after a while, especially in a family with neurodivergent children. I've learned that I've got to start being looking for the square hole, for this square peg of a family, right? And that's okay. There is a peg, there's a hole for us, right? Like there is a place for us. But trying to fit the mold that doesn't necessarily fit. And that's not to say we've cut these people off in our life, but there's a lot less association with them just because these variants start to come into play, and you have to really trust your children to kind of help you find the answer there. Another good example I have is we were in Cub Scouts. It was something that I never did as a kid, but I thought it would be really fun for Theo to try, teach him some things, and it was great. We were in a pack here locally, but the problem started to come in where there were no other neurodivergent children in the pack. And we would go to these campouts and I'd be there, and none of the children after a while wanted to play with Theo because Theo was just delayed in so many ways. And so then Theo, it got to the point where it was tooth and nail to bring him to every meeting or camp out. And I finally just sat him down and asked him, what's up? What's the deal? Why do you seemingly don't like this? And it was because no one wanted to play with him. And so I just made a decision, and I was actually a Cub Scout leader at that point. I was teaching the Lions, and I just stepped down, and we were completely removed from it. And the same answer, the same example comes up with sports every time we try sports. In like my wife's mind, she grew up playing softball, so the kids are going to grow up playing softball, and we try certain sports like soccer we've tried and t-ball, and they don't take to it, they don't like it, and they don't want to do it. So we don't push the envelope there because it sometimes does feel like we're trying to put a square peg in a circle hole. So for me, it's really being just taking a step back, looking at your situation, and every neurodivergent family is different, but looking at that situation and deciding what fits and what doesn't, right? And then, it's a matter of just then setting boundaries. And sometimes it feels like ripping a band-aid off, but I promise you, if you let that thing heal, you'll be better for it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jeremy, you've seen a lot of men come through DOSA that probably have a lot of these same challenges. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you, because it's not just the neurodivergent, you're going to have kids that have got CP, you're going to have kids that have Downs, um, it all over the place. Are you telling the guys that are coming in going, man, I just don't know how to deal with this? Are you kind of sharing the same information to these guys?
That's the thing about our groups is, these guys are able to get together in these rooms and they share experiences just like what Sean just did. And you have other guys in the room that can relate to those same experiences, or they have other experiences that align with that. And again, when we talk about certain topics, I mean, I even look back to our challenge series. We have the topic of grief, grieving the child you thought you would have. Now, sometimes that looks like this whole idea of not being able to participate in an activity. As a father, we grieve that process, right? Because we desire it. I wanted to do this as a kid. I wanted to be a Cub Scout as a kid. I didn't have the experience. I want my kids to have that experience. And then you get in that experience and you realize again that they don't fit the mold, or that it's not the right environment for them. And then you have to work through that process of being okay with letting go, and getting to the place of saying, you know what, there are other things that he enjoys that's better for him, and it's not this specific thing. And sometimes it's through the conversations that happen in these rooms that we can come to the conclusion. And again, it comes back to something we've talked about before. We each have to come to that conclusion on our own. It's something that has to develop in our own story, with our own family, because it's going to look different for every single one of us, right?
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, even our situation, it's like we don't go to certain like we don't go to certain places anymore that we know is going to be a challenge. We opt for delivery services like Walmart and Target and other places. Please sponsor us. But we opt for those so we don't have to have the challenge of the public shaming, if you will. We went to the Jacksonville Zoo last October, And, Lindley had a meltdown because she wanted to finish feeding the giraffe. We did this whole thing where it was like, we thought it'd be cool. You get to feed the giraffe. It's, I don't know if you've seen a giraffe's tongue, but it's the size of like my whole leg. And whenever the giraffe took that leap, she loved it. She wanted to do it again, but she didn't want to get back in her stroller. And, it was a tantrum the whole way down. And this lady looked at Lindley and said, "Oh my," and it was almost like you should spank that child. And I've never seen my wife want to like the claws, the mama bear claws. I have never seen her so defensive, at that moment. And it kind of jumped out at me as like, oh, we can't do everything that, I mean, we want them to experience it, because we're like, how else are they going to learn? How else are they going to do that? But we have to remember sometimes, like what you said, Sean, may not be the square hole for our square pegged family. That one could be triangle, and we just have to recognize it.
Yeah. I want to add something to the question you had for Jeremy. How do we like disseminate this information, or do we explain these things? What I've seen a lot of, and I feel like honestly, it seems like such a great approach is what I've seen is we'll have individuals come in, myself included, and everyone shares their piece, right? And um the best thing is like most people won't have something to give you, right? A lot of times we'll hear these stories and we'll stay silent, right? And then the next individual shares. But what I've found is that like as we go around the room and everyone's sharing something, we're all pulling stuff from each other, And so we kind of are helping and answering each other in ways by not directly saying, "Hey man, I see where you're at and this is what I did." Not necessarily. It's more like, "Wow, that's that's tough." And then I share my piece and he understands, they understand, where I'm at and where he's at. I think what I've learned is that like it's not comparison, it's perspective. It really just it's good to hear from other individuals in that same position, in similar positions at least, um, because it can be humbling and it really does heal the soul, to be honest, to hear these things. So I like to share a lot when I'm in there, and I think I like to try to say things, but for the most part, I feel like I'm one of the younger individuals in the group, and I know that I could probably benefit a lot more from listening than speaking. And sure enough, when I do, I always pull out a lot of great things.
Well, sometimes it's just venting too, and there's and that's what the groups are there for, is to get it out. I can't tell you the number of times that Jeremy, like we'll meet for coffee and I don't stop talking, you know, and I'm just like, did I just I get in the car and be like, did I just ramble for an hour and a half? And a lot of time it's just good to talk and get it out. But in those situations, everybody gets that chance. But we jumped in really serious really early, and it was with the calendar, and I tried to make it a little more lighthearted. But I want to hear, Jeremy kind of alluded to it. I want to hear how you found out about DOSA, and just kind of that whole story, because I need a good laugh. So and it sounded like it was a laugh.
I hope I'm hitting the mark here, Jeremy. But if I'm telling this the same way I told it before, essentially we joined Battle Creek, and so our journey of finding a church has been many years of like we will try once in a blue moon a new church, but the experience usually is so tooth and nail, and the church will tell us, it's fine that your kids, have special needs. Like we can take care of it. And more times than not, 5 minutes into the service, our phone number's up on the screen or whatever, right? And so we have to run and go get them. Um, and they tooth and nail want to go the next Sunday. And so when we found, I don't even know how, but I just like was researching churches again. Just it was like, hey, we're coming up on our annual review of looking for a good church, and we still haven't found one. We looked up, tried to look up specifically churches with special needs, and then we found Battle Creek. We found Haven, and so we went one Sunday and that just to try it out. And I was expecting what we've seen in the past, but my kids, both of them kind of went in with resistance like we expected, but they didn't call us. And we didn't understand that they were specifically trained for this situation, like we hadn't seen before. And at the end of service, they'd give them these like church bucks, and they were begging to come back because they wanted to collect more church bucks. And so it was just like, okay, we have to jump on this, right? And so we started going, and I remember thinking I want to join. Like I was looking for a disc golf group. Yeah, so I play disc golf, and I thought, okay, I think it's pretty typical. I've seen a lot of churches that have their own courses, on the side of the church, right? Thinking that Battle Creek's so big, they got to have a disc golf group. No disc golf group, but I found DOSA, so I'm looking in the D's quite literally for disc golf group, and I find DOSA, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I didn't even know that men with neurodivergent or any type of special need families get together and chat. And I thought, why not try it? Right. And it's now become like I've missed a couple and I really can't stand that. I even missed those couple and I've been going for a while now. But yeah, it was just on a whim. I just happened to be looking for a group of guys to play disc golf with, and then instead I found DOSA, and I think it was all right to miss out on a disc golf group because I think I found something pretty cool instead.
I would agree. I'd agree. Did you ever find a disc golf group? Just out of curiosity.
No, but I have a couple buddies that I play with on Saturdays, so I'm still getting my fix in.
And we've talked about doing a DOSA outing. We're going to put together a disc golf day and just go out and play some disc golf.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I
I'm,
couldn't
I'm
do
good
that.
by any
I
means.
my
So
my
next
my
question.
discs would go sailing off to the right and left without. I mean, I'd be like in the rough the whole time. So if that's even a thing, but like I might hit a car and it go into the window of the car. Does that count for anything if it goes in the window of a passing car?
I've hit a truck before once. It was pretty funny, and I mean, it wasn't funny at the time. It's funny to talk about now, but yeah, all this disc golf talk, it just reminds me that I literally have a disc that was retrieved in some pond, that basket case, which is the local disc golf store here. They've called me to come get, and I totally forgot about it. So now I'm gonna go do that tomorrow. That's how good I
Yeah.
am at this game. That basket case is calling me once a week to come pick up the disc I keep losing.
It was so cool hearing him share this story in one of our DOSA meetings because again, Sean's just engaged so well, and then I'm sitting there hearing him talk about how he was looking for this disc golf group and that he found DOSA instead, and we all got a great little laugh out of it that night, didn't we, Sean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, in the phone book when people put A1 as their company name, so they're the first one you find. It's almost how it was when I was looking for disc golf. DOSA was the first thing I found. I'm like, all right, well, this works.
That's awesome. And something you said, I think, really chimed in on my when I heard you say is like, what have I got to lose? You know? And I think that's really the mentality that we have to have going into situations where, we're going to be vulnerable. What do we have to lose? We have everything to gain, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I am and I've been transparent with the group about this, but where I'm at spiritually is just it's been hard to identify for quite some time. And so like I think when I saw the group and I said, why not try it out? It was more from a standpoint of I want to find people in a similar situation because, it's very easy. It's very easy to just have your circle of people uh, break bread with and hang out with and socialize with can just be from whatever circle you attend, like church, or your friend, your children and the friends they have at school or whatnot. Um, but finding people that have children with special needs is like, where do you go? Like, I mean, unless your child is in a special education class and they start clicking with kids there, and you just do this awkward, like asking the teacher for that parent's phone number, like where do you go? And so like now, honestly, I don't think about it enough, but how awesome it is to have a group like DOSA. I have two, funny, oddly enough, using the same example, two families that have special need children. Um, are in the same classroom as Theo, and they have been for a couple years. And so we've gotten to know these families over the last 6 months, because all the children, know each other and get along very well, and they're all three actually autistic. Um, and one of the families, like dad is a Oklahoma Highway Patrolman, really cool dude, and he's a veteran like myself, and so we've clicked. Um, and then the dad of the other child, I've just got to know him fairly well in the last couple months. And I told them about DOSA when we had all three got together for like a dude hangout, and I told them about this group, and they were just like eager, like, dude, when's the next time they're getting together? Can we come? And like, because this isn't something you hear about, like if you're an alcoholic, AA is a thing, but who knows that dose is a thing if you've got a special needs family. And yeah, I think even talking about it right now is making me realize that I've even taken it for granted to some degree, because it is pretty special, unique, and awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Even like, because Jeremy and I met at Little Lighthouse. My daughter goes there. Of course, Landon graduated from there. And I didn't even know that things like this existed. Lindley got her diagnosis and she was like in the family learning center. And then it was just like, what do you do for guys? Because I feel like everybody focuses on the mom, but we have like that same set of struggles, but we don't talk about it, you know? And that's the thing I'm sure you've seen. It's like, I think Jeremy says it best. It's all the same trauma. It just looks different
Yeah.
for each man.
Yeah. It's, every household, I've always, there's times where even honestly, Jeremy, I've said this to you as well. Like when you shared how, I know that I've said this statement to you before, that the typical home structure situation where we're saying, oh, the conventional kind of tropes that the husband will fall into, and then the wife. And I've kind of laughed, even told Jeremy, like, in some of those ways, my wife and I are kind of like reversed. And I think there's a case for so many different examples there. But for me and my wife, I think the struggles are a bit different, but it's making sure that we come together at the end of the day and communicate these things and try to get on the same page as much as possible. For us, I'm more of like good cop, and she has to be bad cop, because again, I'm a yes man, and so like my kids just completely trample me and stampede
They
me. And
walk all over you, don't they?
yeah, and I can't like even fathom the thought of disciplining my children. I don't know, it's hard for me. And for her, it's just like, nope, she will put the foot down and figure it out real fast. And I'm like, dude, we better run and hide, like and so, it's different for us, but like at the end of the day, like the struggles are, yeah, I mean, there's very much similar struggles in that with autism for our two boys, one of the biggest things we struggle with is it's like, again, trying to fit this mold that doesn't count. And my wife will get caught up in this a lot, and it's the idea of like getting on Facebook or even socializing, talking with individuals, and that their child is the same age doing these things in school, right? And we understand, I think subconsciously, that yes, our children are going to be delayed, and they are delayed in certain ways compared to what's considered the societal norm. But again, that's putting the wrong, like, there's a very famous book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and Stephen Covey wrote, and he talks about paradigms, and and basically this is the idea of like you have the wrong overlay of the map, and so right now trying to fit that societal norm that my kid over here is already doing addition, and they're in second or third grade, and then my child can barely say the alphabet, right? And so this kind of speaks to what Jeremy said earlier, like you get frustrated because what you have planned for your child may not be the course that is happening. But like even voicing that is hard to do as a man, I feel like, because, or probably any parent, right? Because like it's so hard to voice something and not feel selfish, but I do feel the way I feel about it, and it's like, and I want to be able to confess that and express that. Like, yeah, maybe you're someone that hoped that your kid was going to follow in your shoes and be a football player for the high school team like you were, but and it stinks that that's not going to happen. And like, you want to be able to say that and have people actually feel that with you, and not feel like people are going to go, wow, that dude's a jerk, like, and I really do believe that. I mean, I think, yeah, I honestly think that the difference between the spouses does come into play, but I think the key there is really coming together at the end of the day and making sure that you get it all out. Communication's key.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. That comes back to the calendar, full
Yeah.
circle there.
Yeah.
Um, so I have a question, and this is everybody always focuses on like the trauma, the negative, this should have happened, that should have happened.
Mhm.
But what do you do to find the joy in the everyday? When in reality it's difficult to find it, but what do you do to find it?
Yeah, I think the exercise that I like to go through is taking a step back and just and taking a deep breath, because I think a lot of times we are in these either one of two states where we're focusing on the past or we're tripping on the future, and trying to live in the moment is very hard to do for anyone, and not just even in a family with children with special needs, but when we're in the thick of it and it's just chaos and we can't, and I'm wanting to just blow my lid because it's I mean these days are all that happen all the time. I have to ground myself in knowing that this will pass. Like Tom Hanks, there was a they do this roundtable thing, called Actors on Actors, and they'll always bring, like, this big roundtable of all these like famous actors, but it's such a diverse group. Every time they do, it's very interesting. But just so happened at this table, the two old timers they brought were Robert De Niro and Tom Hanks, right? And so someone was asking something around something, or rather, the younger actors. One of them asked something like, "What would you pass on, Robert De Niro? Like, you're at the end of your career, basically. What would you pass on?" I don't even remember what he said, to be honest. But then Tom Hanks chimed in. He said, "This too shall pass." He goes, "Are you having the best day of your life? This too shall pass. Are you having the worst day of your life? This too shall pass." And he just kept going on and on. Your son was just born, and it's the most magical thing. This too shall pass. Like, he just put it in perspective that everything will come to pass, so you might as well live in the moment. And so that's something that I constantly tell myself when I'm really in the thick of it with my children. This too shall pass. Like, this moment where I'm aggravated or I'm frustrated or I'm mad or I'm feeling guilty, it will pass. So, like, I need to live in the moment, appreciate it, because I will never get this moment back. That I think that's what I my go-to is.
I feel convicted now. You
Sorry,
know, no,
philosophical.
no, no. I'm here for it. I'm here for it because I mean that was today. I was like I was deep in it, and Tara looks at me. She goes, "Are you mad?" I was like, "I'm fine," you know,
Mhm.
which is code for just leave me alone for a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a really interesting perspective. Jeremy, what do you do to find the joy in the everyday?
For me, I just remind myself that we serve a God who authored each one of our children. And scripture in Psalm 139 reminds us that he knit us together in our mother's wombs and he formed us and all our days were numbered. And so for me, I'm able to find the joy in knowing that my son was a gift to me. And and Sean kind of touched on this. I mean, there are difficult moments and there are great moments and they all pass, but recognizing that's a gift from God and he's the one that's given him to me. And I should be grateful. And again, it touches on something else that he shared earlier, and just that it's not the comparison, but it's the experiences, right? Or the perspectives, as he said. And so for me, it is the idea of knowing that some of the things that frustrate me are some of the things that other families only wish they had. And we talk about that in some of our groups of, the moments when the room is loud. There are families who are sitting in silence because they've lost their son or daughter. And all of a sudden the noise isn't so terrible. And so So just having that perspective, and that's why I love that word that Sean shared, is just having that perspective that these stories are so different, but there's still things within that to be grateful for.
Yeah, it's, I really want to hone in on like, I'm glad you brought that back up because I wanted to elaborate. I said it's not comparing, it's perspective, because a lot of times we don't, comparing has such a bad rap, and it is bad to compare. But when you're looking at it from a perspective angle, if it helps you gain perspective, I think then it's okay, right? Like the comparison I would make when I'm in there is like you just said, Jeremy, like, dang, what I'm dealing with is not nearly that, right? Like when I hear someone sharing that their daughter's having half a dozen seizures a day, and my kid's mad because of, you know, we're debating something, and he's getting frustrated, right? And like it's totally different environments, and it humbles me, and it's that perspective that I think we all, there's never enough of it, right? And I feel like that's what's great about the monthly cadence is that I'm getting my monthly dose, and it's like a pill that you give me, and here, this is good for 30 days, and then I come back for my next dose, right? My next dose of I'll
Well
stop
done. Well done. Well done. That's a good dad one. That's a good dad joke.
Well, and I think it's important to realize too. I mean, we talk about the dangers of comparison, and a lot of times comparison is associated as such a negative word because a lot of times it's associated with like envy or jealousy, and that's not applicable in what we're talking about here. It's a different type. It's not leading to envy or jealousy or those things, but it is more just in a relational or even empathetic way, right? And so it's kind of a different, again, approaching it from a different angle and just using it to evaluate your own situation, your own life, and where things are at.
That's very true. And that's the thing. Like we we need to constantly be kind of taking stock and seeing where we are. And sometimes we forget to do that. You know, like you said, this too shall pass. Sean, let me ask you this: if it wasn't for DOSA, what would be your kind of the day to day like thing that you'd be dealing with that you don't have the support for?
I honestly feel like it comes back to basically like the theme of this conversation today is that I would still be wrestling with fitting a square peg in a round hole. And I think I would be oblivious to it to some degree, like it's I think you touched on something earlier that really ties in here for me is where we avoid these certain stores, right? Because of the meltdowns, right, in public. And I'm going to reference Stephen Covey again in his book, but he talks about how when he had a one child that did have special needs, and that he was in softball or t-ball, and that when he was not making the plays like the other children, they'd say it's all right, we'll do better next time, or you're doing great, son, but it was always these affirmations of you're not doing enough yet, you're not there yet, right? And so it was, and then they had to, him and his wife sat back and go, okay, we need to fix this because something's not working. He's getting very upset about this. So what they found was it was all about their perspective, right? Like, and it was all about they wanted to fit a mold to keep up with the Joneses for public appearance for these things. Like for us, for the longest time, we hated going to a store like Target or Walmart because our kids would just have these giant meltdowns if they couldn't have anything. And so we just like avoid it altogether. And to some degree we still do because it just depends on the day, right? If this is a day we don't have the time, we're just like, nope, we got to, in and out. Like you sit in the car with them, I'll run in. But there are times where we go through the experiment of no, we're going to go in there. And if they make a scene, it's going to be uncomfortable for me, but I have to get through this. I have to do enough exposure therapy with this to understand that like why at the end of the day do I care more about hushing my child up because that person who I have no idea who they are is looking at me funny, and I want to make a good impression on this person who I'll never maybe see again, right? And maybe I even do, but like the point still stands. Like this child in front of me is more important because they're directly in my life, and this person isn't. And that's like this thing that society has just taught us, that we have to keep up this appearance. I just read another book that, it's a wild study, and this individual goes to another country, and the customs there are just like, it's in Germany, and they're just like totally mean, like going in everywhere, like they're just like not necessarily mean, but they're not being friendly, right? And then they finally stop someone to ask them, and then this individual goes in this long spiel about how in America, because of consumerism and what we are, like we've grown accustomed to everyone must be friendly with each other to prove that they're a good person, and that's not the case for a lot of countries around the world. And so I think this ties into what I'm saying, is that, we care so much about public appearance. I care about it, at least I have for the longest time. And I'm learning to unravel that now as I'm spending time with the right people for my life, instead of spending time with people that don't matter. And I mean like public people that I don't really know, and worrying about what I look like for individuals that aren't even a part of my life. Um, I think these are the type of things that have come up in my mind ever since I've joined DOSA. It's like now that I've taken a step back, and I've realized, hey, I don't fit in this hole. It's also then looking at the canvas, looking at the board, and saying, where do I fit? And it may not just be one place, it may be lots of different places. But I've been just forcing myself into a life for so long without even realizing it, until I get myself in a room of other people and hearing their stories and hearing everything they're going through, and realizing you're not alone, I think is the big part of it. I I think this could be probably very similarly said for any type of support group, is that joining it is probably the hardest part. And then once you get in there, realizing, holy cow, like I'm not the only alien the person in the world experiencing this, and that I think is twofold. Like it's eye-opening, and it makes you reevaluate how you even think about the world, but it's also reassuring, to know that someone's already treaded these waters, and they when they listen with their ear, it's from a empathetic ear instead of a sympathetic ear.
Would you say that perspective is the biggest thing that you've gained from being part of DOSA?
Yeah, I would definitely say perspective. It's kind of more like I self-awareness, um and finding where I belong. But yeah, perspective is definitely part of that.
Jeremy, what questions do you have? Because you've been sitting over here silent watching us. It's kind of awkward because you're just like over there in the corner,
I, well, I kind of like that. I'm kind of
literally in the
there.
corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I am literally in the corner. It, it's not my first time. Probably won't be my last. Um, no, I think the only thing that I was kind of processing through was, first off, Sean, I think this is amazing. So appreciate you sharing. Um, I like the idea of maybe just asking the question of, if you had to give an elevator speech of DOSA, what would that look like? And just kind of packaging it all up into just a couple minutes of just your overall, like you even made the comment of inviting these guys from your classroom, right? Um, it's always fascinating to me to hear. Man, we are really hung up on perspective on this call. I know, because in my mind, I'm like, that's where I'm going with this. Is it's always fascinating to me to hear the perspective from other guys of how they view DOSA, um, in a summary form. When you're sharing it with these other guys, or you bring it up in a short conversation where you might only have a few minutes to invite a guy, like what you've shared with your son's classroom, um, kind of kind of bundling that up and giving us that perspective from your side of what DOSA really has meant and looks like, and how you view it.
And
Yeah.
keep in mind real quick, you're going from the ground floor to like the seventh floor. So you've got some time. It's not like first floor to second floor. So you got like 30, 45 seconds with somebody. How would you tell someone that? Because yeah,
Yeah. I'm very familiar with elevator pitches. I had to give them in a lot of interview processes, so I've learned to dwindle down the verbal pauses. So I'll just start. So with DOSA, what I appreciate the most about it is if you are, and I hate to be the person to say AA, but like when you think of AA, what it does for individuals, there's a program maybe intended for every session, but if they just spend the whole session just having individuals speak and say their part, then that's okay. It can be what it needs to be. And a lot of times that's what DOSA ends up being. It ends up being we may have a lesson plan and we get to parts of it, but a lot of individuals may take up a lot of the time sharing. And those are honestly the most beneficial conversations we end up having. It's what's so beneficial is hearing these other individuals that are in similar situations and sometimes worse, comparable, like, I guess, but worse or better situations with special needs. But there's a lot of similarities that you can extrapolate and pull out of every story you hear around the room, and it's judgment free, right? I've heard everything under the sun. It feels like at this point, and there are times where I even feel compelled to say something, but I hold my tongue because that's not the purpose of this meeting. The purpose is for individuals to share, right? And for everyone to go around and tell us what's going on in their life if they feel compelled to do so. And I've learned that even the most quiet ones will eventually speak up, and I'm so glad when they do because I always leave and it's just because I'm finding people that are like, it's like all of a sudden we said it earlier, right? Like, how do you explain this to neurotypical families that don't understand this? You can't. But what I found is that now there's people that understand this language I speak, right? It's almost like as if you only spoke a language that no one else could understand. And now you just finally found a community that can, and you just want to go run and tell the world, right? And so that's how I really feel about DOSA. I feel that it's for those that are going through the life of living the special needs family life. You need to find a community of like-minded individuals. And I think if you're a father going through a situation, DOSA is the answer.
I don't think I could have said that any more succinct and better.
I felt like I was all over the place, but I was trying.
No, chat GPT's got nothing on you, man.
Well, you don't have to try, Sean. It's
Yeah,
that's the beautiful thing is you just share from the heart. You share the truth and that's what matters. So,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
it's not Chat GBT, but it's funny. I just explained this today because I was at the gym with a buddy, and he said, "Man, when I have conversations with you, it seems so meaningful." And I said, "Well, I have a couple buddies that like to call these what they call Seanversations. So just if I was an AI tool, I'd be a Seanversation."
I may title that the name of this podcast, The
uh,
Seanversation.
that's really
I'll be
good.
okay with that. I'll show those
That's
guys. I was like, "You guys made it."
dude, that would be so cool.
So you
But
got it. That's what it's going to be called. This is the Seanversation.
Yeah, they'll call me up and say, "Hey, man, can I have a conversation?" I'm like, absolutely, let's do it.
A special thank you to Sean Medlin for sharing his story with us today, and an even bigger thank you to you for taking time to listen. For Dads on Special Assignment, this ministry exists, and this podcast is part of that mission to remind you that you are not alone. There's a brotherhood here, and you can find real community with other dads who understand. We'd love for you to connect by joining DOSA Connect, meeting the first and third Tuesdays of each month. Visit www.dosausa.org. That's www.dosausa.org to learn more. If today's conversation encouraged you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share so you'll always know when the newest Dadcast drops. And so another dad can find the same encouragement and connection you found here.